It's really, really, really lovely to be here with all you lovely lot. It's lovely to meet some people in the flesh that I've only ever, seen on Facebook. And it's lovely to be surrounded by beautiful souls who are looking to maybe understand life in a slightly different way. And it means so much to me to be sharing an understanding that has really transformed my world, that of my clients, and hopefully some of my friends and family as well. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold as well. Bear with me. I'm going to be talking about stories, the stories that we all live in, and how when we start to see through those stories to what really lies beyond them, we can start to struggle a lot less with life. And I'd like to start off, thank you, by sharing a story of my own about Legoland. It was a couple of years ago that my mum and I had the bright idea of taking my two children, who were 5 and 6 at the time, out of school for the day, and apologies to all the teachers who I know are in the room, to go to Legoland. It turns out actually that was a massively flawed plan, because we got there and it was absolutely heaving, and it was apparently a local inset day for all the nearby schools. So that was my first problem. The second problem that I had was I suddenly remembered that my son was actually terrified of any kind of amusement rides. So I kind of wondered what we were going to do for half the day. And then I spotted above our heads this beautiful, sedate-looking monorail that goes around the top of Legoland. It looked like it would have a lovely view of the park. And I thought, oh, that's perfect for my son, Ollie. Let's give that a go. So we got to the carriages, and we were sitting in the carriages, and this guy comes around and clicks the bar in and checks that it's secure. And I had a little bit of thinking of, that seems a little bit excessive for a monorail, but I kind of went with it. And some of you are obviously going to guess what happened next, but a minute later we were going up a very slow, big hill, as you do, and I turned to my son, who was white as a sheet, terrified, screaming, "Mummy!" as we hurtled down this hill and started careering round this track. And it's about then I realised that it wasn't the blissful monorail, it was the Dragon roller coaster. So 5 minutes of absolute horror for my son and worst mum in the world guilt for me. But what I really want to talk to you about is what happened after that. Because we all got off the ride and I went straight to my son and I saw the absolute terror in his face. He was really, really almost a full-blown panic attack. I'd never seen him like that ever before. He's 6 years old, he's shaking, he's white. So I try and comfort him and make him see that he's okay. I then look at my mum, who was visibly shaken and traumatised herself and didn't really know what was going on. And then I look at my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, Robin, who was beaming so widely, like all her Christmases had come at once. And she turned to me and said, "Mummy, that was so fast, my boobies nearly fell off." And in that moment, I saw so clearly the absolute separate realities that all four of us were in from what looks like the same external experience. And, you know, Ollie's story was fear and terror. Robin's story was joy and excitement and boobies falling off. And my mum's story was a bit of everything mixed up together from what I could see. And my story was parenting fail, guilty mum, you know, need to make sure my son's okay. And it really got me kind of interested in that moment, in that the roller coaster itself had no power to create a story within us. Like Jackeen was talking about with the teddy bear, the roller coaster didn't have any feeling transmitting device. If it did have that power, we would have all felt the same way. So the stories that we were living in that moment weren't coming from the roller coaster itself. It's impossible for it to work that way. So we were creating those stories through our own experience. And that's what we do all the time, from day in, day out. We're living in our own stories, our own separate realities that we make up in real time all of the time. And it seems so unbelievable sometimes to think that could possibly be true. Of course, the roller coaster made my son feel terrified, right? But it's just not how it works. And we often think of our mind as a camera, like a video camera, or a camera that's taking in reality as it is and kind of transmitting that to us. And actually what I've come to see and what I've come to really know to be true is that our minds are much more like a paintbrush. What's in front of us is a big blank canvas. What's in the paint pot is infinite potential. And we are literally painting our stories in real time, moment to moment to moment. And we make up a lot of these stories. We have stories about ourselves, stories about other people, stories about the world around us. And we live within them like a fish in water, so absolutely certain that it's truth and that it's reality. Until we maybe come to an event like this or read a certain book or speak to someone who maybe has us think that maybe that's not true. And then we can start to look at it and we can know deep down that it's never really been true, because these stories are so changeable. I can think about things like road rage, where somebody cuts you up in the car. One person can have a really violent reaction to that, can want to get out and lamp the other person. One person can be totally chilled and zen and be like, oh, that's fine, it's all good. And that can actually be the same person on 2 different days. You know I've experienced that. Angry one minute and, calm and zen the next, about the same exact external situation. And even those stories that we have about ourselves, those really kind of belief level stories of, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, those really dark ones that we can really get stuck in, they're made of the same stuff. You can't take those stories and put them in a wheelbarrow. You can't show me those stories. They don't exist anywhere other than transient thought energy literally rolling through our minds. And we know that because we don't think them all the time. Even the I'm not lovable, even those really dark ones, some days we can really feel unlovable, and the next day we can kind of almost not have that be as big a thing in our minds. So they're changing all the time, they're transient. And that really got me thinking, what is constant? If our stories about ourselves and the world are transient and changeable, what is the constant thing? And it points back to what all the speakers today so far have spoken to, and it has me always think of the sky. And really, we are like the sky. The sky is blue. The sky is always there. It's always the same. The weather that the sky gives rise to can change. We can have clouds and rain, thunder, rainbows, fog and mist, whatever. But the sky behind is always the same. It never changes. It doesn't care what weather's going on within it. It doesn't have an opinion about that. It gives rise to it, but it is not that. And that's where I want to help people look at more clearly, point in that direction. The stories are changing all the time. The part of us that is constant is never, never changing. It's unbreakable. It doesn't need fixing. It contains everything we need to live a full and happy life. And I think we see it an awful lot in the outside world. Like right now, all the leaves are falling off the trees and the seasons are changing. And we have this kind of intuition. We know that there's something behind that. There's an energy behind that has babies grow in mothers' wombs, that has the swallows know when to fly home, that has salmon know how to swim upstream. There's an energy and a power behind life that we can see is happening, but we somehow forget that we are that too. And that is what fuels us. That is our infinite potential. That's who we really, 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 truly are. And what I know and what I see is that looking more in that direction and looking less at our stories can really do something to a person. It can help us see that our stories can go on, we can live in them all the time, but there's something that's going on as well at the same time. And I've experienced a real parallel experience of this. I don't want to transcend the human experience. I don't even want to conquer it. I want to be able to play full out. I have every emotion imaginable. I can get angry and sad and frustrated and all of those kind of emotions. But I also know that I'm always okay. And I didn't used to know that. And when I didn't know that, I would get so stuck in anxiety. I'd get so stuck in emotions. I would really feel like there was just no safety net behind life, And that what I was feeling in that moment was the truth and was who I was, and there was no possible way that there was anything else going on. And now what I see is something very, very different. And really what I want to kind of point people towards now is that place that the stories are changeable and there's nothing that we need to do. And what I think a lot of the self-help movement has done until now, and very well-meaning and very innocently, has had us look at those stories more and more Look at what we've created them with. Look, let's go back to our past and work out why we think the way we do. Why is that story like that? Why is your story like that and yours isn't? That must mean something about you. Or they've tried to have us try and jazz up those stories or reframe those stories or think more positively about those stories, you know? All kind of propping up something that now I can see as an illusion that doesn't need any analysis, because analysis of our problems and our stories only makes us an expert on our stories. It doesn't actually help us transcend and transform and really kind of see the truth of who we really are. And from that place, every story is okay. I can be happy, I can be anxious, I can be nervous coming up here to speak, I can be sad, but I don't get lost in that anymore. I don't need to numb out from it with a bottle of wine like I used to. I don't need to try and do 10 affirmations in the mirror to feel lovable. You know, I don't need a 5-step plan for happiness. I can play full out in all of those stories while knowing that I'm really, really okay. And I think, like all the speakers so far have pointed to, that sense of okayness isn't something that comes from here. It's something that really comes from the soul. It is our soul. I'm not a religious person, but it's really God. It's the infinite power behind life. It's the bit of us that's always connected. And from that space, that's where we have our true power. That's where our wisdom comes from. So what I really want to kind of leave you all with, if anything today, is just a reason to be hopeful, that we don't really need to do the work that we thought we needed to do in order to be happy, in order to have a pleasant, peaceful, great experience of life. So there's nothing that I really want to give you as advice or tell you what to do, other than maybe just once do something so fast that your boobies nearly fall off. Thank you.